2.
Well, after a week of me ignoring him and him threatening to end his life, I decided that I just needed to break up with him at that point. So I went to his house to collect my things that I didn't grab the last time that I was there because I was in a hurry to get the out of his house. Anyway, so I go to his house and I walk into his room, which he had left the door unlocked for me to get in, and there laying next to him was a naked girl. And I hate to sound rude or even talk about somebody's appearances, as I am not no Victoria's Secret model myself, but this girl, honestly, she looked his type. She was super unhygienic, like she looked dirty. And she definitely looked like she slept with whoever and whatever would acknowledge her. Anyway, so I quickly grab my things, and as I'm beginning to leave, of course, he wakes up. And to be honest, I'm not even gonna lie, I didn't care that he was cheating on me. Like, if anything, I was thankful. Yes, you heard that right. I was thankful, because now I felt like I had a reason to break up with him without feeling guilty or caring. Honestly, I was more mad about the fact that he didn't use a condom with me, especially if he was doing this shit all the time. But anyways, like I said, I was relieved. And then, of course, Colton chases after me, but I made sure this man did not catch me. I left, and then I texted him that I was done, and I blocked him on everything. Finally, after 2 months, I felt free. Like, I felt like I had just been released from prison. Best day of my life. Or so I thought. Now that you guys have the backstory of me and Colton, let's get into how this man ruined my life and my safety forever. So about 2 months after him and I had broken up, that is whenever the cyber and physical stalking started. Now, from 15 to 18 years old, I had worked at this gym, the same gym that he would show up to make sure that I was actually working. Well, on Tuesdays, I would work until close, and there was rarely anybody left in the gym at that time. And the gym was open till usually around like 11 o'clock. But like I said, at that time, it was usually just super quiet, super isolating. Well, that night, there happened to be somebody in the gym while I was closing. And all of a sudden, I hear the front door open, and I go to tell this person that, hey, like, unfortunately, we're closing in 10 minutes. You gotta go. But then I noticed the person who walked in was Colton. And as soon as I saw that it was him, I ran into the nearest supply closet, locked the door, and while I was running to the supply closet, he was chasing me. And once I locked myself in there, he is banging on the door, begging me to talk to him, and I'm like screaming at him that if he doesn't leave, I'm gonna call the police. So I begin to dial 911 when all of a sudden I hear one of the members of the gym, the guy who was still there, that he needed to leave me alone, and if he didn't, he was gonna get physical. So a few moments later, you know, the member comes over to the door and he's like, hey, he's gone if you want to come out. And thankfully he waited for me to close up, and he walked me to my car, and I get in my car, lock my doors, I signal to him that I'm good and he can go. And so he drives off. I'm getting myself situated in the car, I'm texting my parents, and as I was about to leave, I hear a knock on the window, and it is Colton trying to rip open my car door. So I step on the gas, reverse the car, and flew out of that fucking parking lot. I was so shaken up, I didn't tell anybody what had happened to me. And honestly, I'm so thankful, because from that day on, that same guy who was at the gym that night would come and wait until I closed up to make sure that Colton didn't show up again. And to my knowledge, he never did show up again. So throughout the next little while, Colton was trying to get a hold of me using fake numbers. Like, I was having to block a new one every single week, and this went on for about like 6 months. Well, then eventually his messages stopped for about 2 months, and you know, I was finally in college in a completely different state, and I had actually eventually met a really nice guy who I had ended up dating for about 3 years in college. But he was an absolute angel. He was super put together. He came from a prestige family. He was tall, smart, had money to pay for our dates, and he loved spending time with me. Now, I don't want you guys to sit here and think that money was everything to me, but like, let's be honest, like, a relationship is 50-50. Like, I get it if you're going through a rough time, but I'm not about to sit here and be manipulated about money. And that is definitely the next thing that I'm going to look for in a relationship, is somebody who also wants to contribute to a relationship. I'm not a sugar mama. Like, go look for that shit somewhere else, because you're not gonna find it here.
Be fucking for real.
Anyways, after being in such a toxic relationship, I think one of the things that I valued most in our new relationship, and that I just really liked, was that we were separate people. Like, we could spend time with our friends without letting it affect our relationship. We didn't have to be with each other 24-7. In all honesty, I would say that this was the first guy that I had ever loved. But that's enough about this guy. We're here for the crazy shit, I know. Hold on, we're gonna get back to the psycho. Anyway, so about 2 weeks into college, I get a text from a random number. Obviously, it was Colton, and he was saying that he wanted to mend things with me. He wanted us to start a family, and he also knew where I was. And then he had also told me that he was going to move to where I was, so that way I would have to get back together with him, and that he was going to SA me, so that way we would have kids together. Yeah, I ignored his messages throughout the week, which consisted of him making death threats towards me and himself. But after a week of that, I didn't hear from him again, so I had thought that maybe he got the hint. So about 4 weeks into college, I had went out the one night with my new man, and we had took our first pictures as a couple, and neither of us posted them. You know, we just kept them for ourselves for our first memory of our first party together. But I woke up in the morning to messages from Colton saying that he saw my new boyfriend and he's going to kill him. And I'm immediately thinking to myself, how the fuck does this psycho know about my new boyfriend? Nobody, including myself, has ever posted any pictures of him anywhere. Like, there were no pictures of him and I anywhere on the internet together. Also, the only social media that my boyfriend had was Snapchat. Like, he was super off the grid, didn't have Instagram, Facebook, none of that. So then again, I ignore his death threats to me, and I'm just sitting there thinking he's bluffing. He just thinks that there's a new guy. He doesn't actually know. Also, his messages were always so sporadic. They were never consistent, you know. Like, sometimes I would hear from him for a week straight, and then other times I wouldn't hear from him for days, weeks, or months at a time. So, you know, as time's going by, my boyfriend and I were doing super good together, and my college experience so far was amazing. And I want to say that it had been about 5 months since I had started college, and I hadn't really been hearing from Colton, thankfully. But one day, I started receiving calls from his mother, his grandmother, and his friends. And the weird part was they all thought that they were calling Colton. Multiple times, I had to explain to these twats that they weren't calling Colton. Clearly, they had to be typing in my phone number if I keep getting all the fucking calls. Because how else would I keep getting phone calls from them? How else would it be me every time answering the damn phone? So at this point, I'm thinking to myself, this is definitely a prank. But then one of his friends even shows me screenshots that it was in fact Colton's number that they were calling. And I'm so confused because what in the black magic shit is going on here? How could they be typing in his phone number when I'm getting all the calls? Doesn't make any sense. Like, even his grandmother in her late 80s thought that she was calling him. So I began to feel super uneasy. I opened up to my roommate about this, and I told her about everything that I had gone through. And the next time that she saw my phone ring, she picked it up and she was like, don't ever call this number ever f***ing again. But his friends apologized. You know, they really think that they're calling him, which they were, because I began to panic and I called my dad and my mom telling them about this. So my dad quickly runs over to our phone company to figure out if this was a prank or not. He was like, you know, are they using some type of app, or, you know, is something wrong with my daughter's phone? And to his surprise, when he walked in there, he saw Colton working at the one desk. So my dad immediately asked for the manager, who actually happens to be a longtime friend of my dad's, and my dad explained the whole situation to him. So the manager looks into the system, and he found out that Colton somehow managed to connect our phone numbers. This man was putting more effort into stalking me than he did our entire relationship. Oh, but that's not the worst part. He connected our phones 6 months ago. Oh, and you think that's bad? That's not the worst part either. Not only was he receiving all of my text messages and being able to listen to every single one of my phone calls, but he also was able to mirror my phone onto his. He could see everything that I was doing at all times. All the Snapchats that I took, my Instagram, my FaceTimes, my location, etc. Obviously, Colton was immediately fired, and the manager thankfully was then able to do everything that he did to my phone. Not gonna lie, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that this is grounds for suing. Just saying. Anyway, so then the manager advises us to also call the police because this is known as like cyberstalking or something. So, you know, the police go to his house, they talk with him. Thankfully, the following week, they provide a restraining order, which not only did it include him having to stay a certain distance away from me, but he also had to not communicate with me over the internet either. I was relieved, but I also felt violated. That for 6 months, he was reading all of my conversations with my boyfriend, who I had sent nude pictures to, as well as also reading my conversations with my friends, family. I had just never felt so exposed ever in my life. So after I don't hear from Colton for over a year, I'm relieved that it was done and he was gone, or so I thought, because again, a year later, I was, I want to say, a sophomore in college when I received a message on Facebook from a girl in my town, and she was like a year or two older than me. But in the message, it said, Colton and I are broken up, so he's all yours. And I replied to her, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't know you. And then she sent me, quote, text messages that I have been sending Colton for over the past year during their relationship, asking if he would get back together with me, and him saying no, and that he didn't love me anymore, and me saying, oh my God, please get back with me. This man was f***ing delusional, because, like, what is wrong with you?
She need a lot of psychological evaluations.
So I told her that that wasn't me, and that I actually have a restraining order against that f***ing psycho. Anyways, fast forward 4 years, I haven't heard from Colton again, and I truly hope that he gets the help that he needs. And listen, I know for a fact that this man was definitely sick mentally, and I'm not gonna lie, I still do feel sympathy for that, but like the way that he changed my life for the worse is like, it was so awful because I was scared to date anybody. It caused issues in my relationship in college, ultimately leading to me breaking up with that guy that I was with because I wasn't able to trust him. I was scared of confrontation, and I felt the need to control situations because it made me feel like I had a little bit of power back from that toxic ass relationship. But yeah, after Colton, I never felt safe ever again. I'm constantly on alert whenever it comes to men and him. I refused to move back home, and there were a lot of situations that had happened over the years that I wish that I could tell them all, but I just want to let all of you know, you're never alone. Someone, somewhere out there is going to be there for you to get you through whatever you are going through, and it could be the person that you least expect. And I wish that somebody had told me this when I was going through it, because I think it would have really helped. Later on, I did end up finding out that a lot of the things that Colton told me about himself weren't true. Like, he never had a brother. He was an only child, and the only reason why he told me he had a brother was because he wanted one. And he like created this fake imaginary brother persona person. He did a lot of drugs during and after and before our relationship. And I'm not talking weed, like I'm talking acid, cocaine, etc. He was also a huge drinker like his mom. That's no surprise. I mean, you're a product of your environment most times. it's hard to break out of that. He also had sex with multiple people during our relationship without a condom. And I immediately got tested after I found that shit out because absolutely not. Thankfully, I'm clean. Thankfully, because ew. And then he went on to fake a pregnancy with him and his new girlfriend on Facebook until she then probably noticed how crazy he was and finally broke up with him and exposed him and told everybody that she was never pregnant. He made the whole thing up. The only reason why I know this is because one of my aunts is friends with him on Facebook. But for a happy ending, I did end up finding the man that I'm going to marry after being together for over 3 years. Turns out he's Dave, the guy that I couldn't get over in high school and who led me to crazy Colton. And you know what? I've never felt more safe, loved, worshipped, and respected than ever. But yeah, we are engaged and we live together. And I know for a fact that if Colton ever tries to get in contact with me again, I'm confident enough to have the courage to remind him that he's nothing to me and he will never ever be anything to me. And the point of this story is just to put a reminder out there to all of you. If there are red flags, they don't even have to be red. Yellowish, red, orange, somewhere in between there, and you have a gut feeling about something, follow it. Even if you're not always right, it's better to be safe than sorry. And don't ever feel bad because of anybody else's situation. It's not your problem. You don't always have to be Captain Save-A-Ho. Be Captain Save Yourself. If you ever feel unsafe, tell somebody. Don't keep it to yourself to try to protect that person. And I see so many people doing that where they will go through so much hurt and they will be treated terribly by somebody just to protect that person. They won't tell anybody else. But if I had followed my intuition after the first time meeting Colton, my life probably would have ended up really different. But because of him, I have extreme anxiety and super screwed up flight or fight responses. Like I won't do anything spontaneous anymore. I feel super uneasy about simple interactions with people. My trust and patience is very limited and I became somebody that I never thought that I would be. But like I said earlier, I'm lucky enough that I found somebody so amazing. And on a lighter note, I'm currently in law school to become a lawyer to help other girls who are dealing with any situations that are like mine. Okay, everybody, that is the end of today's story time. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And